Perfect. All right. And as I said, I'm going to now repeat myself for the recording, just so you folks know this will be recorded. So keep that in mind as we're working through. And Steve, if you want to pop forward just one slide here. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for another episode of the Lessons Learned series. Just a little bit of background around what this is and what this is meant to be. One of the things that we've been reflecting on sort of as an industry specialist only working in higher education is one of the things that is of value that we can offer to people is our network and our expertise sort of across that network. We know it's hard to sometimes meet people and make connections in higher education. So this series really is meant to bring folks together from across higher ed to have good discussions around some of today's most pressing issues. So keep that in mind. If someone says something along the way and you're like, that's a really great thing, I want to sort of continue conversations on that, let us know. We can help connect folks after the call. Housekeeping items, like I said, this will be recorded. Jayla will be monitoring the chat. So if you have questions as we go through, go ahead, throw them in the chat, unmute yourself, jump in. This is really meant to be discussion based. And then finally, a copy of the deck will be coming out as a follow-up to this. So don't feel like you need to screen grab or scribble down notes. We will be sending out the deck afterwards. If you want to pop forward again one more time, Steve, just for those of you who maybe do not know us, we are Eduvantis. We're one of the leading enrollment marketing, growth, and strategy firms in higher education. We've been working in higher ed for more than 12 years. We only work in higher education. In that time, we've supported over 100 institutions in helping tackle some of their most pressing challenges. We have a consulting firm and an agency team under the same roof. And we really are sort of grounded in the belief that this is an evolving, changing ecosystem, and you have to have that real-time market data and then real-time sort of activation data in order to make smart, sound decisions. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to the team who's going to be speaking today. We are joined today by Steve Schreiberg, who is the Vice President and Partner who leads our consulting services team. So I'll let Steve introduce himself, and then Jennifer Allard, the AVP of Marketing and Branding at Grand Valley State University. Steve, take it away.
Excellent. Thank you, Emily. Nice to see some faces I know and see some new faces as well. As Emily said, I'm VP and Partner here at Eduvantis. I've been here basically since the beginning at Eduvantis. So all of those brands and things you saw on the previous slide, I've worked with most of those in all sorts of capacities that are listed on here, including what I'm excited to talk about today, which is brand building and helping institutions like Grand Valley. So I'll let Jen introduce herself as well.
Hi, everyone. Pleasure to be here speaking with you all, hoping I can make some connections with you as well. As Steve said, I am the AVP of Marketing and Branding in the University Marketing Department at Grand Valley State University. I have been here for a very long time in different roles, but I've been in this current role going on about 2 years.
Tell us a little bit about GVSU, Jen.
I certainly can. I'm hoping that those on the call at least have heard of Grand Valley, maybe. Grand Valley is an institution that is fairly new. I mean, we were 1960 is when we were established. We are considered a regional institution in the west part of the Mitten, about 20 minutes west of Grand Rapids, which is Michigan's second largest city. And on the other side of us, we're about 20 minutes from the lakeshore of Lake Michigan. So we've kind of got that city lake vibe going on. So it's kind of a cool place to be. We are the third largest institution in Michigan, behind Michigan and Michigan State. Nobody really knows that, even I think within our state. Some people don't know that. We've got over 22,000 students. We are not a research institution. We are a teaching institution, and we do have a liberal education foundation, which is kind of rare for a public institution. And as you all probably know, it's more of a private liberal arts school kind of thing. But it is embedded in our foundation. We are also known for our athletics. We are the best D2 program in the nation, and we've won the Directors Cup for 16 years for the best athletics program. So we're at least known more on a national level for athletics. And we're one of the most affordable institutions in the state.
Perfect. Thank you. So let's talk a little bit about what this is going to look like today. We have, a little bit more kind of just sort of initial conditions and brand development process slides we're going to get through. And then we've got, 15 or so slides, which are some of the research and findings that we did in collaboration with Grand Valley. I'm not going to get into the details necessarily on those, but more to kind of showcase what it is you can learn if you do this right, and Jen's going to talk a lot about how that helped her to, affect change internally and bring this all about. And then towards the end, Jen will talk more about sort of gaining head nods, what that process looked like, and some lessons that she and her team learned, if and when they go back and do this again, how they might do things a little bit differently at the end. Before we get even further into this, though, I do want to just emphasize, I think brand building sometimes just gets de-emphasized at the institutional level. It's critically important, right? We talk a lot at our company and others about product market fit, things like that are so important to success. And sometimes brand building just gets kind of backburnered because it's hard. Sometimes people don't want to do it. And you might not have the money for it relative to things that directly impact enrollments. And what we want to sort of emphasize here and talk about is, yes, you can do this. There are ways to do this at the institutional level for any kind of institution. And it's foundational to the success of all the other things that you do, is to have this brand foundation there. And think about it from the student's perspective. The one thing they care about probably the most for their life is the brand. It's like tattooed on your forehead, no matter where you go. It's on your LinkedIn page. It's on your resume. It's at cocktail parties, whatever you're talking about. You probably have shirts, you have hats, everything about this brand that you're going to make a choice about will follow you the rest of your life. And ensuring that brand stays up to date and relevant and something that people can be really proud of is essential to the long-term success of your institution. So that's my spiel on brand building. So let's talk about initial conditions. I'll turn it back to Jen to talk about some of the, what it looks like at GVSU, where she started from.
Yeah, I thought it would just be helpful to give you a lay of the land, because I know everybody does things a little bit different. We are a decentralized model because, like everyone else, we can't possibly service the entire community. So we focus mainly on admissions and recruitment and presidential initiatives, but we are full service. We offer the integrated marketing planning. We manage the brand and identity of the university. We manage all the recruitment, awareness, and image advertising. We handle all the digital print publications for admissions, and we are unique in that the web team is in a part of our team as well. So we manage the homepage, and we've designed our own CMS, believe it or not. So we have developers on staff and designers for that. And we also have an expert that's on SEO, accessibility, and we manage email campaigns for the university as well. And just to give you like roles, in university marketing, we're split into two teams. As I said before, I manage the marketing and branding side of the house, and then I have a counterpart who manages web and content strategy. And so we're built out in the form of an agency. I would say we've got about 20 employees, from project managers, researchers, web and graphic designers, advertising manager, you name it. So we've got a full staff, which I know a lot of other institutions aren't as fortunate, but we can do just about anything in-house.
And I'll add to that, Jen and her team here also above them have very smart, ambitious leadership at the institution, right?
Disruptive leaders.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes,
People that are really passionate and ambitious and really want to push Grand Valley forward, and not what it was, but what can it be? And that's really, I think, part of the baseline for this project as well.
Yeah, and then just talking a little bit about our approach to research. Everything that we do is research-based. I've been here, like I said, for quite some time, and we have completed perception research every 3 years since I've been here. This year was this time in 2023 was different than we had before because it was much larger scale, because we had never really taken a look at the brand per se. It was more on what are the perceptions out there to measure our image and reputation. And this time we're looking more about, at our peer institutions and their ratings on image and reputation and how we can differentiate ourselves, what characteristics are standing out in this research that we can use to inform the brand. So as I said, we do this every 3 years. And because we're more on the regional level, we focus on West Michigan and Detroit. And this time we included Chicago because we really want to branch out into that marketplace a little bit more. We're kind of there, but we want to expand more than we are. And as far as audiences, we looked at prospective students that are currently high school, sophomore and juniors, and prospective student parents that were not from the same household. So we didn't get that groupthink. And we always look at the general adult population. Like many of you, we have adult programming too. So we want to know what adults think. But they need to have just a little bit of college experience. We also, for the first time this go around, we looked at current Grand Valley students and parents. Normally we bring them in for focus groups and things, but we did not do perception research and include them. So that was really new for us this year, as well as C-suite business leaders, both in Chicago and Detroit and West Michigan, which gave us some of the most interesting information, much better than we thought it was going to be. So.
Yeah, Jen, I love this. Was an RFP that Jen issued to start this out, at least when we started to get involved, and really appreciated the fact that they had already thought through the audiences and bringing in both internal and external audiences into this process. This was not a navel gazing, what brand do we want to be exercise, and then we'll just project that out into the world. They really wanted to understand the perceptions and awareness and importance of various things to these different stakeholders in the marketplace, which again is how it should be, and sometimes not how it is.
Yeah, and just to give you an overview of like where we are, where we've been in the middle of this brand process. In early 2023, we started the actual perception research, and then we had to go back and do more because, as Steve said, we've got some great leaders that are like, well, if we're doing the brand, we need to do more than what we've done in the past. So it expanded the research, which ended up taking a lot longer than we anticipated. And then that led to the brand architecture, which are basically the pillars of what we want to build our positioning and tagline on. So the brand architecture is complete and approved, and the president's already out there using it. And now we are in the process of brand positioning and tagline, which I just got the next version of taglines today and super excited. So hopefully we're moving on that, and will lead us to our campaigns, which we expect everything to be launched in the fall of next year. So overall, this process has taken us about 2.5 years. And, when we originally started, the president wanted it done in like 6 months. So, yeah, that was a little ambitious, but now that we got into it, she's been our advocate and wanting to do things right and take the time we need.
Perfect. So yeah, so the research where we started to get involved is to, build out what that research plan would look like that Jen started to talk about on that last page. And the way that we talk about these things is in relation to, improving positioning and performance with your brand in the future to ensure your products and positioning are relevant, differentiated, and authentic, which I'll talk about on the next slide. Here's just a little bit more in terms of those various stakeholders that we brought into it. And then, another element that we felt was important was not just surveying people, but actually seeing what's happening in the marketplace. We added some components of when we look at the positioning of what institutions are saying, what's out there, what's on their websites, what are their brands saying, and looking at, okay, where are you losing students to now more so than you lost students to a couple years ago in terms of enrollments and things like that. So kind of just bringing a more comprehensive look and data set into this process. I want to talk for a moment about relevance, differentiation, and authenticity, because these kind of are the guiding framework that we have when we're doing this research, is ensuring that the institution ultimately lands in this place. If you have a brand that's not relevant, meaning it's not basically hitting on the points that the market currently thinks is important, right? If you're kind of positioning on things that the market doesn't care very much about, that's problematic, of course. Differentiation being, all right, you're going to position on these things, your brand is going to be focused on them. Are you actually fundamentally different than those in the way that you're positioning yourselves? Or are you actually kind of living in the same space as everybody else? That will be problematic if you are. And then authenticity, which is why we bring the actual students and students' parents into this process, is, do you actually deliver on these things or not? Are you just saying it, or are you acting on it? And is it part of your ethos or not? If any of these things, kind of isn't lining up, you're going to have a problem with, kind of having that brand that you really want to be.
And if I could just say, this slide was one of the most important slides that I presented to all the stakeholders, because this was like both visual and even with the definitions of them, understanding it. So it helped bring them along of like, okay, we get it now, what we're trying to do.
Perfect. Thank you, Jen. And then just to give you a bit more of the scope of this thing, ultimately we surveyed over 3,000 people, as Jen said earlier, between Michigan and Illinois were both really important geographies for us. And then within each of those geographies, we're focused on these both internal and external audiences, and those external audiences including business leaders, the market makers, as well as those who, did not choose GVSU for one reason or another. So I think this also, Jen, I know from talking with you, getting to this level of responses was also pretty important to helping people have confidence in the results.
Yeah, absolutely. Our president was the one that was questioning all of these results. And so we even had to go back. And I think that's why we added some of the other audiences of our current students and upping some numbers there to give her the confidence.
Perfect. Okay, so let's start to kind of look through some of the things that we found during this research. Again, we don't have to get into all the details on it, but just to show some of the things that you could learn here that are pretty important, we found, in building this brand. So, we asked a question like, which of the following words best describe the kind of student you'd most like to attend college with, or to have your child attend college with? This, I think, is always a foundational question for us, because different brands attract different kinds of people, are attracted to even different ones of these words. And what we found for GVSU was open-minded, respectful, hardworking, and kind. Those 4 words rose to the top for pretty much all of these different segments that we had. And again, this is not necessarily the 4 words that would happen for your institution. You can look down here and be like, well, intelligent might rise up, dedicated could rise up, driven, things like that at other institutions, more bubble to the top. But this was kind of the key code for GVSU, and again, kind of a foundational element there. Then we also, because GVSU, it has some market awareness, obviously, in Michigan, but it does not University of Michigan or Michigan State that has a lot more market awareness. We did provide short descriptions about it, gave some of the descriptions that Jen already talked about earlier. Okay, what is it? Where is it? What does it provide? Especially for those who weren't aware of it before, to help understand, okay, just on the surface, are people attracted to just, these 10 bullet points or not, that are kind of facts about the institution? Who do we have a chance to win with, and who don't we have a chance to win with? Just based on, if they looked on the back of the baseball card here and sort of learned a little bit more about who we are. And, we learned a lot about that. And then as we go through the study, we kind of deconstruct it a little bit as well. Say, okay, which of these elements are attractive to you and which ones aren't for various populations. one of the things we found, there's going to be a juxtaposition here, is that there's a lot on this slide, but what's important to understand here is that high school students, that's who we're seeing on this slide here, high school prospective students, we asked them about a bunch of different attributes and how they would, if they felt like they would describe Grand Valley, as well as if they would describe a number of their competitors that we have a couple of them listed on here. And what we found was students, these high school prospective students, generally speaking, thought fairly highly of GVSU. They found them to be quite competitive against most of these other institutions, basically rising above these, Wayne State, Oakland, and a few other institutions, still below University of Michigan, which you kind of expect, right? But just very competitive from a prospective student perspective, especially on the most important attributes. Juxtaposed to that were parents, which didn't have the same feelings about this, which was very interesting. Jen, do you have, sort of some commentary on that?
Yeah, I have. Yes, this made us all cry because we have this opinion of ourselves that we've worked really hard over the years. And, we're kind of in the midst of all the directional schools, Western, Central, and the like. And we expected that the parents, because enrollment has grown so much for us, we are growing in a down environment, that we thought we'd be up there with Michigan State and U of M. To see us down at the bottom made us pause and think about it. But if you think about Grand Valley, who was just established in 1960, and the parents would be at the age then of going to school, that it would have been like Grand Valley's the school in the cornfield. It's just a step up from community college. So it made sense to us that the perception has not quite grown to where we are. So this, as sad it is as it is a foundation for our brand building of like, we know we have to change perception. So it's invaluable, although sad.
So it'll get better over time, right, Jen?
Yes.
A primary focus of the brand
time.
is to help this with parents specifically, help educate them on how Grand Valley has changed, not what it is now, because they have a perception, but just how it's changed from what you think it is. A couple other sort of elements that we found here. One was affordability really rose to the top for those who chose Grand Valley. It was, one of the top descriptors that they used when they, kind of talking about it. But this goes back maybe a little bit to the last slide as well. Parents in particular, those who didn't go to Grand Valley, actually rated Grand Valley, kind of lower on this than is the reality. Grand Valley's, has affordability is one of the strong suits, but the parents still don't see that, or they're not aware of it, those who don't show up. So again, critically important there to help educate that group in particular on how affordable Grand Valley is. And then we also found that safety was rated very highly at Grand Valley across the board. That was very important to people. And also it's something that Grand Valley really stood out for, both for people who enrolled there, as well as people who did not enroll there. And you can see this even in, kind of niche safety ratings. Grand Valley rated very highly in Michigan. These are, I encourage people to kind of just take a look at these because the market does. Some of these ratings, safety and otherwise on niche, very helpful there. So this, with a host of other stuff, allowed us to kind of start to plot these different competitors within Michigan on various matrices, and we've provided some examples here. This one is affordability, going up and down, employability on the x-axis there, and here's what where it looks like everybody kind of nets out right now, based on what we see when we look around, as well as the responses that we received from the market. And we found that we believe there's an opportunity based on both the authenticity and the ability to differentiate on some of these metrics for Grand Valley to move up and right and really kind of own some of this space up here to the upper right on affordability and employability, which are two of the most important elements for people when they're choosing, especially at the undergraduate level. Similarly, here's another one that's safety and campus experience, kind of positive campus experience and campus environment. where we plotted everyone based on where they are and really felt like Grand Valley could, with, you know, strong branding and otherwise, continue to move in this way. It's authentic to what Grand Valley is, and it would be believable to people, and it would allow them to further differentiate from some of their competitors if they're able to, you know, kind of move the market in that direction with their brand building. Jen, anything on those before I keep moving?
No, I think this is spot on to, you know, this also informed of us on, you know, there's a fine line on safety, right? I mean, we're only one, unfortunately, incident away. So it has really made us think about it, but other ways of how can we promote safety without saying we haven't had any incidents, you know, what are the things that we do to keep students safe, and looking at it from a broader perspective.
Perfect, thank you. So we mentioned at the beginning, towards the beginning, about this interest in exploring Chicago as well, which I live in Chicago. Stacia, a couple of my colleagues live in Chicago as well, not too far away from Grand Valley in terms of from a driving perspective. And so we wanted to, but there's not a huge awareness, you know, here in Chicago, which we'll get to in a moment for Grand Valley. So we wanted to really understand, you know, first of all, what are people's interest in even going out of state? You know, is that viable for you? Are you just kind of dead set on going to an in-state school? And, you know, we found students more likely, the actual children are more likely to be interested in going out of state than some of the parents, you know, might be interested in that. And then we asked about some familiarity with Illinois business leaders, you know, Grand Valley versus some of its competitors. And again, Grand Valley was sort of kind of right in the mix there. And then further, we asked, okay, well, let's learn a little bit more about going out of state here. You know, this Grand Valley is in Michigan. Is that an attractive destination for people if they are going to go out of state or not? Or are you just kind of, you're going to have trouble getting people to go to Michigan, generally speaking? And Michigan performed quite well here, right, Jen? I know you talked about this around campus.
Yeah, we did. We see this as a win because, you know, if you're looking at this, it was kind of like the funny thing around campus of like, if you look at New York and California and the students are saying, oh, we want to go there. And the parents are like, heck no, we're not sending you across the country. So in our mind, it was like, well, Michigan, we're number 2 now. That, you know, parents and students agree. And it's really kind of informed our branding for Chicago because we know that a lot of Illinois residents travel to our beautiful state of Michigan to be on the lake shore and our beach towns. And so on that thoroughfare, we're going to be doing some, you know, marketing to those audiences too.
Yeah, I agree. This was pretty interesting. Again, as someone who lives in Chicago, the upper Midwest is weird for those who don't live around here. In order to get to Michigan, you have to travel through Indiana, but you travel through like Gary, Indiana, and kind of the parts of Indiana that are not that pretty. Southern Indiana is gorgeous. Northern Indiana, not so much. And so a lot of people, when they go to travel to Michigan, you know, for weekend visits and stuff like that, makes it a very attractive destination. And then additionally, we found kind of like on the previous slide with business leaders, there just wasn't that much familiarity with the core competitors of GVSU within Illinois. You know, there wasn't, you know, these, I think Jen said the directional schools, you know, Central, Eastern, Western, and then some of the other schools, just, you know, people aren't that familiar with them. And if they want to go to Michigan, which we're kind of showing over here, students want to go out of state, they want to go to Michigan, they know of UM and MSU, but, you know, after that, there's just kind of wide open space for someone to grab. And GVSU, you know, I believe sees that as an opportunity. So ultimately, you know, we developed this set of attributes, which I won't go through, you know, in specificity here, but we, you know, this kind of Laker is the mascot for GVSU. So what does it mean to be a Laker? You know, big school benefits, small campus feel, which, you know, and then getting into some specifics here on exactly what that means, because again, this is what we heard from people as being both important and authentic and differentiating. And then we built this brand foundation, you know, on which things can stand, starting at the bottom. This is like Maslow's hierarchy. What do we need most here? Well, we need safety. We need, that high ROI, that quality, and then building up from there. Big school amenities, small school feel, and then some of those words that we heard at the beginning. We're reaching out to trying to attract open-minded, respectful, hardworking, kind, people that are attracted to being around people with those adjectives. And then, the specific programs each have different kind of benefits to them, some of which, GVSU ranks quite highly in some particular areas. And then the top of the pyramid, we get to mess around with a little bit here, right? For the Michigan audience, this is a place that's ingrained with the businesses that make Michigan, Michigan. One of the GVSU's qualities, which is interesting, and some of you might have this with brands that you work with, is the students that go to University of Michigan, let's just say kind of the premier institution, often leave Michigan for work, right? So employers in Michigan struggle to get those who go to UM to stay in the state. So a place like GVSU, where that doesn't happen quite as much, is actually very attractive, and employers love GVSU students because they're great, and they don't necessarily want to flee Michigan like those at UM might. And then for the parents, this isn't marketing language. This is sort of just, kind of pre-marketing language. Take another look. We've evolved a lot in the last 20 years. We have to make sure that parents understand that when they're looking at GVSU, it's not the GVSU that they encountered when they were looking at schools, 20, 25 years ago. And then we did similar things, with Chicago. Just as close and affordable as the public institutions, but without all your high school classmates joining you. Language kind of like that can be very helpful. And again, they found, Michigan to be quite attractive. And then adult students, which we talked about a lot during the project, but we didn't talk about as much here. Continue maximizing those existing credits and employment opportunities, providing avenues for growth there with that particular market for GVSU was really important as well. Jen, anything on those before we move to the next section?
No, again, this was very valuable in, us going around and telling the stakeholders what we learned, because this was a simple way for them to understand. Here are the foundations from what we're going to build the brand upon.
Perfect. All right, so I'll turn it back over to you, Jen, to talk about gaining buy-in and head nods, which is critical to this process, or else it's a false start from the beginning, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would say first and foremost, you need to have buy-in at the top, right? You need your president or your leaders to be in on this from day one. And as we keep saying, I've got some very ambitious, game-changing leaders that are all about it. So it was very helpful. But we all live in a world of many stakeholders, and how do we get them all excited and involved? So what we did, we had 2 brand teams. One is a core team of some of the individuals that would be working directly with the brand implementation in my office, and our sister team of university communication, which handles the PR side of the house. And then we also developed a brand team of stakeholders from everywhere around the university that included faculty, mostly important, and the students. So we made sure that, I think I ended up having 25 people on that. They got to hear the research first. So that was they felt really important, and we're also going around and telling their constituents of like, this is what's happening with the university. So creating a little bit of a buzz. When we started out, Eduvantis had interviews with our senior leadership team, the president, and leaders from the stakeholder committee and others that I brought in that I felt made sense for them to talk to. This included leaders from athletics. They have their own brand, and trying to bring them into the fold and play nicely with them. And, faculty can also be difficult if they're not brought on board, and our students, we wanted them to play an important part. So we had our student senate president be interviewed as well, and also some of our alumni. to get their feedback on what they want or expect from the brand and what their perceptions were when they were here. So we did all of that. And then the most exhausting part of this whole thing was the road show we did. We put together, I think, I don't know, maybe we had 6 hours worth of content from Eduvantis. There was no shortage. And it took a very long time for us to figure out, okay, how do we boil this down to about 30 minutes in an executive summary of what we think the important points of what everybody should know. A lot of what we just shared with you all was in that. So we did that. We did about 25 presentations. I could do it in my sleep after we were done. I thought it was really important to do in person, because at that time, like I said, I'm fairly new to the role. I've been in this role almost 2 years. I wanted everybody to know who I was. I wanted them to know the commitment of the university to the brand and where we were going forward, and that they're an important part of that work. So, we even gave it to the coaching staff. So it was interesting because in the past, when we've done this study, it was pretty much to the leaders of the university and no one else. So we really branched out. I can't even tell you how many people were in these 25 groups, but somewhere along the line of a couple hundred people. And it was appreciative. We found that everywhere we went, it was just gratitude that we were sharing that information. The other thing that we did was we tailored the message for the audience, right? So one of the things that came out on one of the slides that you saw today was the relationship with faculty, that we have great faculty here. So when I met with the faculty leaders, I shared that information so they could get excited about that. We met with facilities and we talked about our campus setting and how people think that our grounds are amazing and our buildings are spectacular, so they could get excited about that. And then we just, from here on out, after that, we're keeping people informed on what we're doing next. So I have shared our brand architecture with our University Communicators Network, which I'll talk about in a minute. But we're just keeping people, letting them know where we are with the brand. And once we get that done, we'll come again and give you another presentation, probably on Zoom, probably only a few, not all of those. But I found it invaluable, and I feel like everyone on this campus now knows what's going on and they're excited to see what's next.
It's amazing what some data can do, right?
Exactly.
To kind of get everybody on the same page.
Yeah.
As opposed to just kind of pontificating on what they think.
Exactly.
So yeah, why don't I'll turn it back to you, Jen, to just talk about, the lessons learned from all of this.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing is to know what questions you want answered, what problems you're trying to solve, and have your goals established with the people that are the main stakeholders at the beginning, before you even go out for RFP, so that you have a good understanding of what your leaders are looking for, on top of what marketing is looking for as well. And then, we learned on our RFP that, we needed to be more specific. Don't be afraid to ask for samples from some of the firms if you're looking at having them submit a proposal. We've got some from some of them, or ask some of, the other institutions. I'm happy to share, if anybody's going to do this, what our RFP was, because we need to have that support. And it was, my first time doing this as a leader. So I really feel like now I'm a lot more educated on what needs to be in there. Although Steve said we did a good job, so we'll take that as a win. And then budget. We woefully underestimated what our budget needed to be, and the need for additional expansion, because we had to expand our research and go back and do some other things. And the in-between, we're now, because of this brand architecture, we just had Eduvantis do some further research on liberal education for us, which we didn't anticipate. So now I kind of have an idea of like, okay, I need money in my budget if I can, at least every 3 years for the bigger study, but then some touch point research, in the in-between times. And then timetable, of course, you know, it always takes longer. And as I said, we, you know, when we first started, we thought it would be 3 months and it was a year. So just be mindful that to do it right, give it the time that it needs. And then, you know, on our presentations, like I said, it was great as a one-time thing. I will never do that again. I think what I'll do is, you know, like I said before with the brand, when the brand comes out, that we'll just move to webinars, record it. We can put it on our identity website too, so that everybody can access it. But yeah, doing that was exhausting, and it took about 3 months to go to all these departments and get on their agendas, and it was a struggle.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Jen. That was super helpful, very educational, I think for those on the call here.